Hey, what's up everybody? It's Thunderbob here, and tonight I'm playing some more Diablo 4. This is the first video I'm doing on my Chain Lightning Source post-patch, post-nerfs. And my character did get nerfed, not as much as maybe some of the builds out there. I wasn't as focused on vulnerable damage as some, so I wasn't hit as bad by that nerf, but there were a number of changes. There were actually a couple of buffs also I'm going to point out. In this video, I'm going to show you my gear, my skill, and Paragon setup, and then we're going to run through this Nightmare dungeon that's just a couple of levels ahead of me. I just kind of want to show you how I fare on something like 3 levels ahead. Previously, before the patch, I was running things that were about 10 levels ahead. Post-patch, I can still do that, but it is much more painful now, and I'm kind of embarrassed to show you how much slower it is. So I'm going to show you something just a couple of levels ahead to show you what you can expect if you're kind of doing a Chain Lightning build, and also my thoughts and my changes to the build. Alright, I'm going to show you the skills. I've got, I don't know, multiple videos kind of showing the evolution of this build, so if you want to go and watch more like a philosophical why I picked everything, I'm going to kind of just show you what I'm using. So this build is based around Frostbolt enchantment, and for a long time I was running Fireball. I know everyone says to use Firebolt previously. I was actually one of the few people that was not running Firebolt. I'm kind of happy about that because it got majorly nerfed. I was using Fireball for the longest time. I have switched to Frozen Orb with that increase from 20 to 30%. I am seeing a ton of Frozen Orbs, and it really synergizes well with this build. So back to our skill tree. So I got 2 points in Frostbolt, just to be able to use as the enchantment and to move forward. 5 points in Frozen Orb, all the way down here to the one that gives me a chance for vulnerability. And then I've got maxed out Chain Lightning and all the way down to the Crackling Energy. This, I think, is the best way to produce Crackling Energies in the game, because it's not a lucky hit. It's just every time I crit, I get Crackling Energy, and with this build, I have near 100% crit rate. So just real nice. I'm basically every Chain Lightning I get, I'm probably popping out 2 to 3 of those Crackling Energies. Because I'm almost always above 100 mana, I'm using this for the increased mana, and I'm using this for the core and mastery skill damage. The mastery doesn't really matter to me at this point. 1 point in all of my defensive abilities, and then I've got a lot of plus skill that's also impacting this. A couple points in Glass Cannon. They've nerfed survivability so much. This is an area may take some points if you're dying a lot. But you also lose a lot of damage. I got 1 point here. I'm not seeing this trigger as much. I may actually get rid of this completely. I kind of just got rid of most of my lucky hit. I just don't have much use for it on this build, but I do see it trigger enough that 1 point feels worthwhile. Coming on down, we're not really using any of our conjuration skills other than, of course, all the defensive ones. They did buff Align the Elements, so now it's 9% per second. So basically in like 4 seconds, this is almost at the max, which is nice. It's a huge, damage reduction against elites, which is probably the thing that's hurting and killing you the most. Mana Shield got buffed also. This is kind of nice. It does make up a little bit for the major defensive nerfs that happened in this last patch, but it doesn't quite overcome those defensive nerfs. And we're going to talk about those when we get to the items I'm wearing. But it is nice. I'm glad they at least did something, but I don't think it was enough. Even if this was like 25%, I don't think it would balance out against the nerfs that happened overall. And then protection actually got that extra second, which is really nice. Another one, this got increased to 9 seconds, but again, resistances kind of suck. I actually put 3 points in this, and I was testing it out, and I was kind of assuming, like, if I used a lightning skill and then a fire skill, and, like, I was kind of expecting that it would stack, and in my testing, it doesn't. I can't figure out a way to make it work with multiple skills. So I think it's either I'm not understanding completely how it's working, or it's slightly bugged, but you could not get, like, multiple stacks of this. It seems to only stack once. We'll keep moving here. 1 point here, and then 3 points here. This is really just to get the energy from Crackling Energy. Nice way if for whatever reason you run out of mana, which in this build I rarely do, but you can refill real quickly. I got 6 points here. This is giving me an 18% damage increase to chilled enemies, which is all of my enemies. and a huge frozen damage increase. Your unstable currents, which is just excellent. And then this is one where you could kind of go either way. Crackling energy doesn't do a ton of damage, but the main reason you're using this is for the shock skill cooldown. This will let you use teleport more frequently. This will let you use unstable currents more frequently. It's just a nice bonus. But if I'm pushing Nightmare Dungeons, if I'm doing like plus 10 content, I'm going to switch over to Veer's Mastery just because of that 25% damage reduction, which is huge. One other thing that's kind of optional is I'm using this for the 30% damage reduction. If you're doing like lower content and you're pushing Crackling Energy, you might want to go here. It's kind of, I was using that at the lower levels, but that 30% damage reduction against everything is huge. It's a big damage reduction. That's the basic build. So the biggest change from my previous is obviously just using Frozen Orb, and I'm going to show you how that works as we progress. I'm going to look at my Paragon here real quickly, and I'm almost maxed out. Obviously, I've got another 30 points or something, a little bit less than that, but we've got the non-physical damage, which is giving me 70% non-physical damage. Got both of these, 3 of these maxed out here. I'm going over here for the damage reduction from chill, damage reduction from chilled, and when I get a couple of spare points, I'm gonna get these others. Like, because I'm taking so much damage, I really need all the reduction I can get. I just don't have enough points to fill out everything yet. But that before I hit 100, I do plan on getting these last couple of damage reduction skills. I've got the Frostbite Glyph, which is giving me 100 and almost 30% damage to chilled, which is literally everything because of that Frostbolt enchantment. 30% damage to chilled. Yeah, just lots of chilled damage and chilled impacting things. I was using this for a little while. It honestly, I get so many barriers from the cooldowns, I wasn't very noticeable, so I stopped using it. Coming along, I'm using the crowd control glyph. 145% damage to crowd control. That's pretty crazy because everything is basically crowd controlled that I fight. Crackling energy damage. Got this one. Makes your crackling energy sometimes not consume a charge, which is really nice. More crackling energy damage. We move on here. And I'm using the critical strike, and this was buffed. So this was before only impacting core damage. This now impacts all damage. So this should also work for things like my crackling energy, which is real nice. Or my teleport, actually. Should increase my teleport considerably. So this is like one of the small buffs we got, along with that Frozen Orb buff. We got the damage to stun. I'm wearing Raiment of the Infinite, so I'm doing lots and lots of stunning. So decent amount of stun damage. And we move on down. And I do eventually want to grab Static Surge just because I'm stunning so often with the Raiment of the Infinite that I think it would be worthwhile. That's another one. When I get a couple of extra points, I'm going to come down here. I really wanted to get this last board to be able to use the Crackling Energy. And when I get this maxed out, this should be giving me like probably close to 200% Crackling Energy damage because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5... 6 more, 7 more, 8 more intelligence slots I can grab. And then it's going to be giving me, you know, it's 10%. I've got a couple more levels to put here. I should be getting like 130 to 150% crackling damage energy. And my crackling energy is already critting for like 20,000. So it's not too shabby. It's actually a pretty decent bonus now. And then I do plan on coming and putting some of my last points here into the vulnerable rare node here, and then I think I'm about done. I've considered also using the vulnerable glyph, but even when I'm maxing out, it's only giving me like 30%, and it doesn't seem like if I could take 150% crowd control, which is always on, versus 30% vulnerable, which is multiplicative, so it's better, but it's also conditional, and my only real vulnerable consistent is Frost Nova, so that's why I'm not using it. I might switch to that later, but that's the Paragon. And yeah, let's look at items real quickly here. Mostly using the same as before, a couple of small upgrades. This was obviously nerfed. This used to go up to 50%, now it's 30% on that imprinted aspect there. I think it's still useful. Armor is such a big component of your defense, so I'm still using it, though if I find something better I might swap it out. Raiment of the Infinite, Probably the only unique in the game worth using as a sorcerer. You got, this gives me just a flat, like, 20% increased damage all the time because I'm almost always above 100 mana. So, that's pretty good. That's pretty awesome. It's just like a straight 20%, you know, increase in damage. Additional Frost Nova charge. This is really nice because that's my only source of vulnerable. It's also a nice crowd control, and getting 2 of them, very nice. Going on down. So I'm using this control aspect, which was nerfed on bosses. This doesn't triple damage anymore. You only get one kind of trigger of it. I'm not 100% on non-bosses. Like if you're fighting an elite and I teleport on them and I Frost Nova on them and I trigger my Flame Shield to immobilize them, am I still getting triple? From the patch notes, I'm not 100%. Anecdotally, looking at the damage I'm doing, I think it is still tripling. I could be wrong on that though. But that's why I'm using this Flame Shield imprint. You will notice on the weapon I've lost some critical strike damage. Let's see, this... Yeah, I lost critical strike and crowd control damage. Both of those were nerfed. I think it was 17% in critical strike, 30% in crowd control. So that's where I'm losing some of my damage. Yeah, that kind of sucks. This is also another major component of this build. So I get almost 60% increase in critical strike chance when I'm above 100 mana, which is basically all the time. So, and that's for all core abilities. So my Chain Lightning, but also the Frost Nova that's getting thrown out. That Frost Nova crits almost 100% of the time also, which is really, really useful. Also, the I'm getting a ton of that Hoarfrost passive and the defensive skills. Moving on down, this and this are how I have almost infinite mana. So anytime you crowd control something, you get 4 mana, and it's like, okay, that stuns, that freezes, that immobilizes, that chills, and then I've got my Frozen Orb that shoots out that chills and can freeze. I have so much crowd control going on, and each of those are independent. So it's like, I right-click, everything that just got chilled gives me 4 mana each. I teleport on top of them and stun them, that gives me 4 mana for each enemy hit, even if it's the same enemy. So just incredible amount of mana regeneration. And then this one is nice for single targets, so on a boss, like, this is not going to really work. But every time it bounces back to me, I get a ton of mana. So this is really nice for boss fights. Yeah, that's the basic build. The biggest things that obviously changed are this defensive aspect got nerfed. Control aspect got nerfed. Frozen Orb got a slight buff. Yeah, that's about where I'm at. It's definitely, I'm squishier now. I can do up to level 10. Still much more painful now. I'm not going to be leveling up doing plus 10 anymore. I'm probably going to be doing like more like 2 to 5 and doing it like faster paced, though getting less experience per run. But let's go ahead and jump right into this run. Alright, so here are the mods. Nothing here that's really that critical, like I don't have increased damage for lightning, cold, anything that I'm really doing. I don't have any reduced damage either. Non-boss monsters get some lifesteal, but as long as they're not hitting you, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, nothing here that's really like... This suppressor's kind of annoying, but I can work around it, especially with the enemies only a couple levels ahead of me, instead of 10 levels ahead of me. And like, I have been able to do up to plus 10, but it was just like embarrassingly slow, and I died, and I prefer just to show you like, here's like a more realistic kind of farming scenario. You know, and like everything just kind of explodes. I did change, like I said, from Fireball to Frozen Orb. Like look at that. That Frozen Orb just did like 40,000 damage. And the main reason is I'm doing less damage now. Like, so before I would kind of teleport and like it would kill a guy or two, and it would almost always trigger Fireball, which would then kill a couple more guys. I just feel like overall I'm dealing less damage to where I'm not seeing guys die enough to trigger Fireball as frequently. And, like, Frozen Orb is better in some ways. Like, if I'm fighting a single target, like a boss, a world boss, that Fireball enchantment does nothing, whereas the Frozen Orb actually contributes quite a bit of damage. Frozen Orb also chills and can contribute frozen and vulnerable, if you're lucky. So on bosses, it actually chills and will help me stagger them more quickly, which on a sorcerer, even though it's been nerfed a bit, it does still increase your damage pretty considerably. So, like, it helps me to trigger the stagger more quickly on bosses. It's chilling enemies. It's adding vulnerable, 25% of the time, and completely 100% of the time if the enemies are already frozen. In most cases, though, they die before that's really, like, a factor, I would say. I feel like this build works better with the more enemies you can group together because of the Raiment of the Infinite. Like, you teleport, you hit your Frost Nova, and you kind of are hoping to be able to do that to another group and another group and another group. This dungeon, I feel like, has not been great for that so far, but we'll see. I'm kind of unsure if the control aspect has been nerfed on all enemies or if it's just bosses, because, like, I feel like if I trigger, and things are going to die too quickly here to really see it, but if I trigger, all of my card control, my Frost Nova, my teleport to stun them, and my fire, it feels like it's still multiplying. Like, I'll see 200, 300,000 damage crits when my base crit is more like in the 30,000 damage range. I feel like unless they were stacking, I don't know if I'd still be seeing those numbers. But I haven't really done the math on it. And I did change out to the Crackling Energy Ultimate. So I am seeing those cooldown reductions, which is nice. But I'm also taking more damage. Like, if I was doing rank 100 or level 100 enemies, I would definitely switch back to the one that gives you increased damage and damage reduction from close enemies, because that was a pretty substantial reduction. That's like a 20, I think it's a 25% reduction you can trigger. And, like, most of the time with this build, I'm playing very offensively. Like, because our survivability has been reduced so much, my survivability is now largely through, like, crowd controlling enemies or burning them down fast enough that they can't kill me. So, like, most of the time I enter combat by teleporting on top of them, which is dealing a decent amount of damage and stunning. If they're still alive and it's going to take a couple of hits, I'll Frost Nova them to trigger the Frost and the Vulnerable, which increases my damage against them. And then, like, if it's a boss or, like, an elite pack with, extra health or defense, then I'll also use the Flame Shield, then I'll run through them and trigger the Flame Shield, do a little flame damage to them. I'm still not 100% on the Frozen Orb. Like, I'm kind of going back and forth. I think for content that you're able to just, like, burn through and you're killing groups of enemies in, like, a single bound, I think Fireball is probably better. But I think this kind of content where I'm, like, taking me a couple of hits to kill guys, and the bosses are not going down as quickly, I think in those situations Frozen Orb's going to be better because, I'm triggering it more times per combat, and it's working more on bosses and things like that. So, but overall, I'm definitely disappointed that Blizzard, nerfed everything in the game, and more specifically, like, they didn't really buff the Source at all. Like, the Source is, I feel like not many people argue it's the weakest class. It's the most played just because it's the Source, that everyone loves that class, but it's also, it seems like the weakest class. It's definitely the squishiest class. So I was expecting some improvements. And if anything, they just all around got worse with this patch, which is just, like, I feel kind of amazing. Like, that's not what anyone in the world expected. But it is what it is. You know, there's another video, should be up about the same time as this one, that goes into more detail on my thoughts on that patch. Not every specific change and not all the class changes, but more like a high-level kind of philosophical changes. Yeah, there's kind of the rotation right there. Teleport on top of them, Frost Nova, if they're still alive, Flame Shield, throwing out Chain Lightnings, letting the Crackling Energy do its thing. And you'll notice, like, that Crackling Energy, it's critting for a bit more. It's doing less damage because I still need a few more Paragon points. It's kind of like the last glyph I'm upgrading. But if I had that upgraded, I'm pretty sure I'd be doing like 50,000 damage crits at this stage with Crackling Energy. So it's not doing nothing. And we'll see if I can trigger some Frozen Orbs just to show you like how it does kind of improve. Like, look how fast I'm staggering him. Damn, he staggered already. But my damage also, while it's increased, it's not as increased as it was when Control Aspect was getting tripled. So there you have it. These were guys that were just a couple levels higher than me. But I feel like this might be the optimal way to level now. Instead of pushing, you know, Nightmare Dungeons 10 levels ahead and trying to get as much as you can, rushing through like an even level or 2 or 3 levels ahead of you dungeon, I feel like is going to be the optimal way to level up to 100. And then obviously, like, you can push Nightmare Dungeons higher. There's not really a reason to, because the same gear drops, you know, at you know, fighting level 100s as it does fighting level 150. So it doesn't really make sense that much to push unless you're just really going for it. Yeah, I'm going to end it here. I will probably be starting, you know, a season character or 2. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to do a full playthrough, but I'll probably do some highlights as I level up. And yeah, if you like what I'm doing, please do like, subscribe, and drop me a comment with any thoughts on the changes, on the build, on the nerf. Just let me know what you're thinking. I do want to thank you again, and have a good night.